Imagine you're at a busy train station in a big city. There's a small coffee stall right by the platform. It sells the same coffee you could get 2 blocks away for half the price. But people still line up to buy from it. Why? Scarcity creates value. That coffee stall has something special. Not better coffee, but a better location. There's limited space on that platform, and the stall owner controls it. Since people are in a hurry, they're willing to pay extra for convenience. The location is scarce, and that makes it valuable. Tim Harford uses everyday situations like this to explain a powerful idea in economics. When something is limited and people want it, it becomes valuable. It could be land, time, a product, or even your skills. For example, why are houses in city centers more expensive? Because space in the center is scarce. Why do doctors or engineers earn more money? Because their skills are harder to find and take years to learn. They're scarce. This lesson teaches us to look beneath the surface. When prices seem high, it's often not because the product is better, but because something behind it is rare or limited. So next time you see something expensive or in demand, ask yourself, what's really scarce here? That question alone can uncover the hidden logic of the economy around you. Let's go on a journey to a busy farmer's market. Imagine dozens of stalls, some selling fruits, others vegetables, spices, or homemade jams. Shoppers walk around, comparing prices, quality, and variety. Each buyer wants to spend less, and each seller wants to earn more. It's a perfect dance of supply and demand. No one is ordering anyone around, yet somehow things work. The apples go to the people who value them most. This is the beauty of a market in action. Markets are powerful but imperfect. Tim Harford shows us how markets, when left to work freely, can do something magical. They can coordinate millions of decisions without a central planner. You don't need someone at the top deciding who grows what or who gets what. The invisible hand of the market takes care of it, guiding everyone's decisions through prices. Prices carry powerful messages. If coffee beans become rare, prices go up. That signals farmers to grow more coffee and consumers to use less. Over time, the market balances itself out. Markets aren't always perfect. Imagine now that one of the jam sellers adds fake sugar to save money, but doesn't tell customers. The jam is cheaper, tastes okay, and sells well, but it's unhealthy. Or imagine a farmer dumps waste into a nearby river to cut costs. His vegetables are cheaper, but the river is now polluted. In both cases, the true cost of the product isn't being paid by the seller or buyer. It's being paid by someone else. Maybe the environment, or future generations. These are called externalities. Markets are great at handling private costs, the ones you pay directly, but they struggle with hidden costs that fall on others. Pollution, health risks, inequality. These are market failures, and when they happen, we need rules, regulations, or taxes to fix them. Harford doesn't say markets are bad. He says they're powerful tools, like fire or electricity. They can do wonders, but they can also cause harm if not used carefully. So what's the takeaway? Learn to see both sides. Understand how markets shape the world and how they sometimes fail. Let's step into the world of supermarket checkouts. Ever noticed how some cashiers scan items quickly, smile, and help customers, while others go slow or barely make eye contact? Now imagine the store manager introduces a new rule. Every cashier gets a small bonus if their checkout time is fast and customer reviews are good. Suddenly, even the slower worker starts speeding up and smiling more. Why? Incentives shape behavior. This is what Tim Harford means when he says incentives drive behavior. People respond to rewards and punishments, even small ones. If you want to understand why people do what they do, follow the incentives. Incentives aren't just about money. Think about schools. A teacher who is rewarded only for test scores might start teaching to the test instead of giving real understanding. A student who wants praise might choose easier subjects just to get higher marks. Here, the wrong incentives lead to the wrong behavior. A city introduced a small fine for parents who picked up their kids late from daycare. Strangely, late pickups increased. Why? Before, parents felt guilty about being late. But once a fine was added, they saw it as a price, not a penalty. The fine became a permission slip. Incentives don't always work the way we expect. People's behavior is complex, and sometimes social, emotional, or moral values are stronger than money. A badly designed incentive can backfire. Governments, companies, schools, even families use incentives all the time. If you want to change outcomes, like improving education, reducing traffic, or encouraging saving, don't just make new rules. Understand what really motivates people. Good incentives align personal interest with public good. Bad ones create loopholes, unfairness, or even harm. In short, people do what they're rewarded to do. If you get the incentives right, you can nudge behavior in smart, surprising, and even life-changing ways. Picture this. You've got 100 rupees in your pocket. You can buy a nice dinner, a book you've been eyeing, or save it for the weekend movie. But you can't do all three. Choosing one means giving up the others. Trade-offs are everywhere, and life is full of them. Economics is really the study of choices, because our time, money, energy, and resources are limited. Whenever we say yes to one thing, we're silently saying no to something else. That no is called opportunity cost, what you miss out on by choosing something else. Take hospitals, for example. Imagine a hospital has a fixed budget. Should it spend more on expensive cancer treatments or basic care for thousands? Saving one life sounds important, but what if that choice means ignoring dozens of others who could have been helped more cheaply? These are hard, uncomfortable decisions, but real ones. Or think of city planning. If a government builds a new highway, it may ease traffic. But what if that money could have fixed water supply or improved schools instead? Every public policy has hidden costs, even when the intentions are good. Harford shows how smart decision-making begins when we recognize these hidden trade-offs. It's not about being cold or heartless. It's about being honest. Trade-offs are quietly shaping us. Do you wake up early to exercise or sleep in and feel rested? Do you take a high-paying job with stress or a calmer job with less money? Do you scroll Instagram for 30 minutes or read a few pages of a book? When we ignore trade-offs, we make lazy decisions. Harford urges us to pause and ask, what am I giving up when I make this choice? That one question can lead to clearer, smarter living. In the end, life isn't about avoiding trade-offs. It's about understanding them. The better we get at recognizing them, the better we become at managing our time, money, and energy. That's the real power of thinking like an economist. Let's say you're buying a used car. Two sellers offer similar cars. One costs less but has no service records. The other is a bit pricier but comes with full maintenance history and a warranty. Which one would you choose? Most likely, the second. Why? Because you have more information, and that helps you feel safer and more confident in your decision. Information is crucial for decision-making. Tim Harford explains that in every transaction, information matters deeply. When one side knows more than the other, it can lead to unfair outcomes. Economists call this problem asymmetric information. Think of the used car market again. The seller knows if the car is a gem or a junker. The buyer doesn't. Because of this, buyers become cautious and may not want to pay full price. As a result, good cars get pushed out, and the market fills with bad ones. This is called the market for lemons, a term economists use for markets that collapse because of poor information. But it's not just about cars. It happens in healthcare too. Doctors know more about treatments than patients, which can lead to overtreatment or unnecessary tests. Insurance companies may not know how risky a person's lifestyle is, so they raise prices for everyone. Even job interviews are full of information gaps. Resumes, degrees, and references try to signal value, but they're not always accurate. So how do we fix it? Markets find creative ways. Warranties, ratings, reviews, certifications, trial periods, return policies, these all exist to bridge the information gap. They build trust and make the market work better. Harford teaches us to be aware of who holds the information in any situation. If you're making a decision with less information than the other person, you're at a disadvantage. But if you understand the information game, you can make smarter moves. For example, when choosing between two products online, don't just look at price. Look at user reviews, brand history, and return options. If you're selling something, be transparent. Good information builds trust, and trust builds value. At the heart of it, Harford is telling us this. Knowledge is power, especially in economics. The more clearly you see the facts, the better your decisions will be. And when everyone has the right information, markets become not only efficient, but fair.